Stay behind me! The little black girl screamed as she threw herself in front of the billionaire. Rain exploded across the concrete parking garage. Nathaniel Sterling barely had time to react before Victor Hale, the man who had protected him for 11 years, reached inside his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a black handgun. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Not the guards. Not the drivers. Not even Nathaniel. Because the terrified child standing in front of him looked far less shocked than the man holding the gun. 2 hours earlier, the Sterling Crown Hotel glowed like a palace against the stormy Chicago skyline. Black SUVs lined the entrance. Cameras flashed beneath gold awnings while donors in velvet gowns drifted through the marble lobby carrying champagne flutes that cost more than most people's groceries for a week. Upstairs, the Sterling Foundation Gala had raised nearly $40 million in a single evening. Downstairs, beneath the ballroom and far from the crystal chandeliers, Denise Brooks pushed a rattling laundry cart through the service corridor with aching wrists and swollen feet. Her daughter walked quietly beside her carrying a folded stack of damp table linens against her chest. "You tired, baby?" Denise asked softly. Amara shook her head even though she was. The girl's sneakers squeaked against the tile floor. One lace was broken and tied into a hard knot near the ankle. Denise glanced toward the freight elevator. "Stay close tonight," she murmured. "There's too many people moving around." Amara nodded once. She always nodded instead of talking too much. Talking too much usually made adults stop listening. Somewhere above them, music vibrated faintly through the ceiling. A slow orchestra. Expensive laughter. The kind of laughter that never sounded worried about rent. Denise stopped beside the employee break room and rubbed the side of her neck. "I gotta finish Ballroom C before midnight," she said. "Sit here a minute." Amara stepped inside the tiny room without complaint. The television mounted in the corner played muted weather alerts about incoming floods near Lakeshore Drive. Beside the sink sat 3 untouched dessert trays from the gala. Tiny chocolate cakes with silver flakes on top. Nobody downstairs was allowed to eat them. Amara looked at the old vending machine humming against the wall. Then her eyes drifted toward a security monitor mounted near the ceiling. One of the parking garage camera feeds flickered for half a second before going black. Then it returned again. Amara frowned slightly. "That thing's broken again," one dishwasher muttered while passing by the room. Another worker shook his head. "Funny how it only breaks during VIP events." Neither man noticed the little girl listening. A few minutes later, Denise disappeared down another corridor, leaving behind the faint smell of industrial soap and lavender lotion. Amara sat quietly swinging one foot beneath the plastic chair. Then she heard footsteps. Heavy ones. Not hotel staff. Men's dress shoes against concrete somewhere beyond the service door. Voices followed. "Low. Careful." One of them she recognized immediately.
Victor Hale.
Even downstairs, everyone knew Nathaniel Sterling's bodyguard. "Timing matters," Victor said quietly somewhere beyond the cracked hallway door. "The second shot has to sound messy." Amara froze. Silence answered him for a second. Then another man spoke too softly for her to understand. Victor again. "People trust blood more when it's on concrete." Amara slowly lowered her foot to the floor. Her small fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Then something metallic hit the ground with a sharp clink near the loading dock door. Footsteps moved away immediately afterward. Fast. Controlled. Amara waited until the voices disappeared completely before stepping into the dim corridor alone. Water dripped steadily from a leaking pipe overhead. The loading dock beyond was nearly dark except for one yellow security bulb flickering near the garage ramp. And beneath a black SUV parked near the exit, something glowed faintly against the wet concrete floor. A cracked phone screen. Still lit. Still recording. The cracked phone screen glowed pale blue beneath the SUV. Rainwater creeping slowly across the concrete toward it in thin, crooked lines. Amara crouched carefully near the tire and reached underneath before the water could touch it completely. The phone felt warm. That was the first thing she noticed. Warm like somebody had dropped it only seconds ago. The second thing she noticed was the voice still coming faintly through the speaker. "Timing matters," Victor Hale said again through a burst of static. Then silence. The recording ended. Amara stared at the screen. No lock code. No wallpaper. Just a black background and one unfinished audio file marked 11:42 p.m. Her reflection looked small and distorted against the cracked glass. Somewhere deeper in the garage, a car door slammed shut. She immediately slipped the phone into the pocket of her oversized hoodie, just as headlights swept briefly across the loading dock wall. Victor stepped into view near the garage ramp, scanning the shadows with controlled calm. He didn't look angry. That frightened her more. Angry people moved fast. Careful people moved slow. Amara backed quietly behind a row of industrial laundry bins, barely breathing. Victor checked beneath the SUV first. Then he looked toward the wet floor drain where the phone must have landed. His jaw tightened almost invisibly. A second man emerged from the darkness beside him wearing a charcoal overcoat and leather gloves. Amara could only see part of his face before he turned away. "Find it," the man muttered. Victor nodded once. Nobody saw anything. The stranger hesitated. "And Sterling?" Victor's answer came too quickly. "He trusts me." The words sat strangely in the air after the men disappeared toward the private elevator. Amara waited another full minute before moving again. Her heart hammered hard enough to hurt. Upstairs, the orchestra music had stopped. The gala was ending. Employees began pushing silver catering racks through the corridor, while tired kitchen workers loosened bow ties and checked their phones. Nobody noticed the little girl standing silently beside the vending machines with something dangerous hidden in her pocket. Denise returned carrying 2 trash bags over one shoulder. "Baby, why you standing out here alone?" she asked softly. Amara looked toward the elevator Victor had taken. "Mom," she whispered. "Do rich people ever lie about being good?" Denise blinked tiredly. "Sometimes they pay a lot of money for people to believe they're good." Then she sighed and rubbed her lower back. "Why?" Amara almost showed her the phone. Almost. But then she saw Victor again through the narrow glass window at the end of the corridor. He was speaking calmly with hotel security now, smiling even. One hand rested lightly on another guard's shoulder like old friends talking after work. Nobody around him looked afraid. Amara slowly pushed the phone deeper into her pocket instead. "Nothing," she said quietly. Denise studied her daughter for a second longer but let it go. The television in the employee lounge crackled with late-night weather reports while rain battered the service entrance outside. A reporter warned drivers to stay off Lower Wacker due to flash flooding. One of the dishwashers laughed weakly and said Chicago only looked pretty from penthouses. Nobody answered him. Then Amara felt a vibration against her leg. The burner phone. She froze. Another vibration followed immediately after. A text notification lit the cracked screen through the fabric of her hoodie pocket. "Unknown number. Did you lose something?" Amara's throat tightened. But that wasn't the part that made her blood run cold. It was the second message that appeared 3 seconds later. "I know the little girl has the phone." Amara did not answer the message. She did not even let herself breathe too loudly. The phone trembled once more in her hoodie pocket, then went still, as if whoever had sent it was close enough to know silence could be worse than sound. Denise was tying off a trash bag when Amara reached for her sleeve. "Mom," she whispered. "We need to go upstairs." Denise looked down at her. "Upstairs where?" Amara's eyes moved toward the private elevator. "Where Mr. Sterling is." That made Denise's face change. Not anger, fear. The kind working people got when their child mentioned a powerful person's name like it belonged in their mouth. "No, ma'am," Denise said quietly. "We don't go near guests. Especially not him." Amara swallowed. Something bad is going to happen. Before Denise could answer, the service door opened and Victor Hale stepped into the corridor. His tuxedo jacket was dry now, his hair perfectly combed, his expression calm enough to make the whole world seem unreasonable. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, reading her name badge with a polite smile. "Is there a problem?" Denise instantly straightened. "No, sir. We're just finishing cleanup." Victor's eyes dropped to Amara. Your daughter shouldn't be wandering around restricted areas. His voice stayed gentle, but Amara heard the warning folded inside it. Denise put a hand on Amara's shoulder. She wasn't wandering. She was with me. Victor smiled a little wider. Of course. Then his gaze shifted to Amara's hoodie pocket. Just once. Fast. If she found anything near the loading dock, she should turn it in. Guests lose things all the time. Amara felt her fingers curl around the damp edge of her sleeve. Denise looked confused. Found anything? Victor tilted his head. A key card, maybe. A phone. These events get messy. The word messy landed exactly the way it had in the recording. Amara lifted her eyes. Why did you say that? Victor blinked. Say what? Messy. For the first time, the smile left one side of his face before the other. Then it came back. Because it is messy down here. Denise looked between them, now uneasy. Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded $20 bill, holding it loosely between two fingers. For the trouble, he said, and for forgetting whatever scared her. Denise stiffened as if the money had touched her skin. Amara stepped behind her mother, but she did not hide. We don't need that, she said. Victor's eyes cooled. Smart children know when adults are trying to help. Amara answered very softly. My mom says help doesn't come with hush money. A silence opened in the corridor. Somewhere nearby, a commercial dishwasher hissed and clicked off. For one strange second, the whole building seemed to listen. Then the private elevator chimed. Nathaniel Sterling stepped out with two board members behind him, his black overcoat hanging open, a silver gala bracelet still around one wrist. Victor turned instantly, smooth again. Sir, the car is ready. Nathaniel's eyes passed over Denise first, then Amara. He had seen thousands of faces that night and would forget almost all of them by morning. But something about the child's stillness made him pause. Not fear, not pleading, decision. Is everything all right? He asked. Victor answered before anyone else. Yes, sir. Staff issue. Nothing concerning. Amara looked at Nathaniel, then at Victor, then back at Nathaniel. She wanted to say everything at once. The phone, the voice, the message, the second shot. But adults did not believe children who sounded wild. So she said the smallest true thing she could. Your camera went black for 8 minutes. Nathaniel's expression barely moved, but his eyes sharpened. Which camera? Victor gave a quiet laugh. Sir, she's a child. She saw a monitor flicker. Amara shook her head. Not flicker. It went black at 11:38. He came back at 11:46. Then he came looking under the SUV. Nathaniel turned slightly toward Victor. Not accusing, just looking. Victor's hand moved to his cuff, adjusting it too carefully. We can review it later, he said. You're expected outside. Nathaniel said nothing for a moment. Then, in a voice so calm it made Amara colder, he asked, Victor, why would a child know the exact time my security feed went dark? And as Victor looked away, Amara felt the burner phone vibrate once more against her leg, displaying a new message from the unknown number. Last chance? Give it back before he reaches the car. The message disappeared from the screen almost immediately, leaving only the cracked black wallpaper reflected faintly against Amara's face. Victor's expression never changed, but Nathaniel noticed something tiny then. Not fear. Timing. Victor spoke too quickly after the phone vibrated. Sir, your board is waiting upstairs, he said calmly. This isn't the place for this conversation. One of the board members beside Nathaniel adjusted his cufflinks impatiently. Harold Bishop, Sterling Dynamics senior legal advisor, looked at Amara the same way people looked at spills in expensive places. Nathaniel, he said quietly, you really shouldn't entertain this. The child clearly overheard fragments of security protocol and got frightened. His voice stayed gentle, professional, worse because of it. We have shareholders upstairs, reporters outside, and a merger announcement in less than 12 hours. Nathaniel did not answer immediately. His eyes remained on Amara. What phone? He asked finally. Victor gave a soft laugh through his nose. Probably a staff burner or stolen property from the loading dock. Then he turned toward Amara directly. Sweetheart, if you found something, nobody's angry. Hand it over and go home with your mother. The word sweetheart made Amara grip the phone harder inside her hoodie pocket. Denise noticed. Amara, she whispered nervously. If you found a guest's phone, you need to return it. Amara looked up at her mother. She wanted to obey. Denise spent half her life teaching her that poor people survived by avoiding rich people's problems. But the phone felt heavy now, like it knew something. Harold Bishop stepped slightly closer to Nathaniel and lowered his voice, though not enough. This is exactly how extortion situations begin. Children are coached because they appear harmless. Denise's face drained of color. No, she said quickly. No, sir, my daughter wouldn't. I didn't say she would, Harold interrupted smoothly. I'm saying somebody may be using her. The hallway suddenly felt smaller around Amara. Brighter, colder. Men in $1,000 suits spoke over her head while hotel staff avoided eye contact entirely. Even the security guards stood straighter near Nathaniel Sterling, as if wealth itself changed gravity. Nathaniel finally extended his hand toward Amara. Let me see the phone. His voice was calm, unreadable. Victor watched her carefully. Not angry, measuring. That frightened her more than shouting would have. Slowly, Amara pulled the burner phone from her pocket. Water still clung to the cracked edges of the screen. Harold immediately frowned. That's not one of ours. Victor answered before Nathaniel could. Disposable burner. Could belong to anyone. Nathaniel reached for it, but Victor's hand moved first. Fast enough that only Amara seemed to notice. Just a brief, instinctive motion. Toward the phone before Victor stopped himself. Nathaniel noticed it half a second later. The billionaire's eyes narrowed slightly. Victor recovered instantly. Sir, let our tech team handle it upstairs. Nathaniel took the phone anyway. The hallway grew quiet except for distant thunder rattling somewhere above the hotel garage. Nathaniel turned the device over in his hand. Cheap plastic casing. Water damage near the charging port. One unfinished audio file. He pressed play. Static crackled softly through the speaker. Industrial fans hummed somewhere in the background. Then Victor's voice emerged low and unmistakable. Once he gets in the car, nobody questions me. The recording ended abruptly. Nobody spoke for a second. Harold Bishop folded his arms immediately. Incomplete audio means nothing. Victor nodded once, perfectly composed. Could have been clipped from a training exercise. Nathaniel looked at him. Training exercise? Victor met his eyes evenly. Protective response scenarios use ugly language sometimes. It sounded reasonable. That was the problem. Harold stepped in again. Nathaniel, this is beneath your attention. We should isolate the device, speak to IT, and remove staff from the area. Remove staff. Like Denise and Amara were stains near polished marble. Denise lowered her eyes instantly. We'll leave, she murmured. But Amara did not move. She stared at Victor's tuxedo sleeve instead. Then she spoke softly enough that everyone had to stop talking to hear her. If it was a training exercise, she swallowed once. Why did he change his cuff after hearing the recording? Victor's face remained still, but Nathaniel's gaze dropped immediately toward Victor's wrist. The silver cufflink on Victor's right sleeve was upside down now, as if somebody had twisted it nervously without realizing. And engraved into the polished metal was a tiny Latin phrase Nathaniel himself had chosen years ago for his security team. Loyalty above fear. The words engraved into Victor's cufflink seemed to hang in the cold hallway air longer than they should have. Loyalty above fear. Nathaniel had chosen the phrase himself after a security contractor died protecting a senator. Nearly a decade earlier, Victor had once called it the only rule that matters. Now the silver letters looked different somehow. Smaller, sharper. Harold Bishop cleared his throat softly. Nathaniel, this has gone far enough. His polished voice echoed faintly against the concrete walls. A child repeating fragments and a damaged burner phone are not evidence. Victor stood perfectly still beside him. Too still. Nathaniel noticed that too. Most people shifted under pressure. Victor had stopped moving entirely. Denise reached carefully for Amara's shoulder. "Baby, let's go home." But Amara didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the burner phone in Nathaniel's hand. "There's more," she said quietly. Harold exhaled through his nose. "Of course there is." Nathaniel looked down at her. "What do you mean?" Amara hesitated. Not because she was unsure. Because she was deciding whether the adults in front of her were safe enough for the truth. Then slowly, she reached into the pocket of her hoodie again. This time she pulled out something smaller than the phone. A silver Zippo lighter wrapped carefully inside a damp napkin from the gala dessert table. Victor's face changed before he could stop it. Barely. But Nathaniel saw it. Amara held the lighter tightly with both hands instead of giving it away immediately. "I found this too," she whispered. "Near the SUV." Harold looked annoyed now. "A lighter proves absolutely nothing." Nathaniel extended his hand slowly. Amara studied him for one long second before placing the lighter into his palm. It was heavier than he expected. Old, scratched near the hinge. Rainwater still clung to the engraved surface. Nathaniel turned it over once, then froze. Not dramatically, just a tiny pause that lasted slightly too long. Victor looked away first. On the bottom corner of the lighter was a custom engraving Nathaniel recognized instantly. A compass symbol. Beneath it, small worn letters, VH. Nathaniel remembered the night he had given it to Victor after a security operation in Prague years ago. Victor had taken a knife wound protecting him from a stalker outside a hotel kitchen entrance. Nathaniel had been drunk afterward, shaken more. Then he admitted, and had handed Victor the lighter beside a river while snow fell across the water. "You trust people too easily," Victor had said that night. Nathaniel stared now at the scratches across the metal. New scratches. Fresh ones. Like somebody had dropped it hard against concrete recently. "You told me you quit smoking," Nathaniel said quietly without lifting his eyes. Victor folded his hands in front of him. "I did." "Then why was this under your vehicle tonight?" Harold stepped in immediately. "Nathaniel, this is becoming emotional speculation." Nathaniel ignored him. He flicked the lighter open with his thumb. The flame did not appear. Empty. But something else caught his attention instead. Wedged inside the lighter casing was a folded strip of thermal receipt paper. Tiny. Nearly invisible. Nathaniel carefully pulled it free. Victor moved half a step forward before stopping himself. Another mistake. The receipt paper trembled slightly in Nathaniel's fingers as he unfolded it. Parking garage level B2. 2 black coffees. 11:17 p.m. Sterling Crown Hotel Service Cafe. Quantity. 2. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed faintly. "You told me you were outside with the drivers at 11. Victor's voice stayed level. "I was." Nathaniel looked at the timestamp again. "Then who bought coffee with you downstairs?" Silence answered him for a moment. Not a shocked silence. A measured one. Like everyone suddenly understood the floor beneath them was less stable than it looked. In the distance, thunder rolled softly across Chicago again. Then the burner phone vibrated one more time in Nathaniel's hand. A voicemail notification appeared automatically across the cracked screen. Deleted messages. 1 recoverable audio file. The recovered voicemail sat on the cracked screen like something alive. Nobody spoke while Nathaniel pressed the icon. Static filled the hallway first. Rain somewhere in the background. Then a man's voice emerged low and distorted through interference. "Tomorrow night changes everything." A second voice answered too quietly to identify. Then Victor's voice came clearly. "Once the board signs, Sterling won't matter anymore." The message cut off abruptly. Harold Bishop immediately stepped forward. "This proves nothing legally." But Nathaniel was no longer really listening to him. He stared at the timestamp instead. 11:21 p.m. For minutes after the coffee receipt. Victor folded his arms calmly. Someone stitching together scraps and feeding them to a child. His tone remained perfectly controlled. Too controlled. Nathaniel finally looked up. Maybe. That single word unsettled Victor more than anger would have. Nathaniel handed the burner phone to Harold. Get a private digital forensics team. Not corporate IT. Harold blinked once. Tonight. Tonight. Victor spoke carefully. Sir, if this becomes public before the merger vote. It won't, Nathaniel interrupted softly. Because nobody's leaving with the phone. The hallway went silent again. Nathaniel then turned toward Denise. How much longer is your shift? Denise looked startled to be addressed directly. Another hour, sir. Nathaniel nodded once. You and your daughter stay inside the hotel until then. Victor's eyes flicked toward him immediately. Sir, security can escort them out safely now. Nathaniel's gaze remained on Denise. I said they stay. It was not loud. But for the first time that night, Victor did not answer immediately. Later, rain streaked down the tall glass windows of Nathaniel Sterling's private office suite 3 floors above the ballroom. The gala downstairs had finally ended. Most guests were gone. Chicago shimmered cold and silver beneath the storm clouds while muted jazz played softly from hidden ceiling speakers. Nathaniel sat alone behind his desk with the lighter, the receipt, and printed copies of garage security timestamps spread neatly before him. Across the room, an untouched glass of bourbon reflected amber light. He hadn't taken a sip. The office smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Nathaniel picked up his phone and dialed one number from memory. Evelyn, he said quietly when the line answered. I need archived security logs from tonight, not the edited server copies. Pull the raw backups before anyone touches them. He listened for a moment. No. Don't notify internal security. Another pause. Especially not. Victor. When the call ended, Nathaniel remained still for a long time. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Somewhere in the executive kitchen behind him, the refrigerator motor hummed on and off. Then came a quiet knock at the half-open office door. Amara stood there holding a paper cup of hot chocolate with both hands. Denise lingered nervously behind her near the hallway. Nathaniel looked surprised. You should be downstairs. Amara shrugged slightly. The kitchen lady said they were throwing these away. Steam curled upward between her fingers. Nathaniel noticed she had not asked for anything all night. Not money, not rewards, not even safety for herself. Only truth. Amara stepped closer to the desk and carefully placed something beside the lighter. A folded employee shuttle schedule from the loading dock wall. Nathaniel frowned slightly. What is this? The garage camera stopped at 11:38, she said quietly. But Mr. Hale's driver signed out at 11:12. Nathaniel unfolded the paper fully. A black ink signature marked driver released 11:12 p.m. Victor had told him 20 minutes earlier that he stayed outside coordinating vehicle movement during the gala exit. Nathaniel's eyes drifted slowly toward the rain-dark windows, then toward the silver lighter again. 11 years. 11 years trusting a man because danger had once brought them close. He suddenly remembered something Victor said after Prague, long ago beside the river. The safest lies are the ones people need to believe. At the time, Nathaniel thought it was cynicism. Sitting alone now with rain against the glass and a little girl quietly watching him from across the desk, he realized with a cold heaviness in his chest that Victor may not have been talking about other people at all. They moved Denise and Amara into one of the unused executive conference rooms overlooking the rain-soaked river. The room was too large for 4 people and too cold despite the heat running softly through hidden vents. A tray of untouched catering desserts still sat at one end of the polished table beneath recessed lights. Nathaniel closed the glass door himself before speaking. Nobody comes in here unless I say so. Victor stood near the hallway outside talking calmly with 2 security officers. Through the glass wall, he still looked like the safest man in the building. That was the terrifying part. Nathaniel turned toward Amara. Tell me everything exactly the way it happened. She did. Slowly. No dramatics. Just details. The leaking pipe near the loading dock. The black SUV. The second voice she could not recognize. The words about blood on concrete. Nathaniel listened without interrupting once. Halfway through, he quietly opened his laptop and checked the archived employee shuttle logs Evelyn had just forwarded to his private server. Victor's driver badge had indeed been scanned out at 11:12 p.m. Yet garage access records showed Victor's security key card entering sublevel B2 at 11:34 p.m. No mashingexit escan existid afterward. Nathaniel stared at the timestamps for several seconds too long. What is it? Denise asked carefully. Nathaniel rotated the screen slightly away out of instinct before stopping himself. Then he turned it back toward them instead. Someone used Victor's credentials after his driver supposedly left. Denise frowned. Could somebody copy a badge? Yes, Nathaniel answered softly. But only someone inside the company would know how. The room fell quiet again except for the muted television mounted near the ceiling. A late-night anchor discussed stock futures and overseas markets while rain crawled down the windows behind them in crooked silver lines. Amara sat curled into the leather chair with both feet tucked beneath her, watching Nathaniel think. He looked different now, less certain, like a man slowly discovering cracks beneath his own house. Then the burner phone vibrated again on the conference table. This time no text appeared, just an incoming call. Unknown number. Denise immediately tensed. Don't answer that. Nathaniel looked at the phone for a long moment. Then at Amara. What do you think? Amara surprised him by asking, Can they tell where we are if you answer? Nathaniel blinked once. Possibly. She nodded slowly. Then don't. Nathaniel almost smiled despite himself. Not because it was amusing, because the child was thinking. 3 steps ahead while half the adults around him were still protecting appearances. The call stopped. Seconds later, a voicemail notification appeared automatically. Nathaniel pressed play on speaker at low volume. A man's voice filled the room, calm and almost conversational. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Static crackled briefly. The girl doesn't understand what she found. Bring the phone back downstairs and nobody else gets hurt professionally. Professionally. Nathaniel's expression changed slightly at that word. Not fear. Recognition. Play it again, he said quietly. He listened a second time with his eyes half closed. Then a third. Denise looked confused. What? Nathaniel leaned back slowly in the leather chair. That wasn't meant for me. Amara looked up immediately. Nathaniel's gaze drifted toward the rain beyond the glass windows. That voicemail was left for someone who already works here. He reached for his phone and dialed Evelyn again. Pull every executive access log for tonight, he said calmly. And I want audio isolation on a voicemail I'm sending you. He paused. Focus on background noise. A minute later, Evelyn called back faster than expected. Nathaniel put her on speaker. There's a service elevator chime behind the voice, she said. Sublevel B2 East Corridor. Nathaniel's jaw tightened faintly. Amara whispered, That's where I heard them. But Evelyn continued, There's something else. A piano track in the background. Nathaniel frowned. What kind of piano track? Silence crackled softly through the speaker before Evelyn answered. The Sterling Foundation closing song from tonight's gala. Nathaniel slowly looked toward the conference room doors. The closing song had only been played in one place after midnight. The private donor lounge upstairs. A room accessible only to board members, senior executives, and Victor Hale. The donor lounge upstairs had almost emptied by 1:30 in the morning. Only a few half-finished wine glasses remained scattered across marble tables beneath soft amber lighting. Beyond the tall windows, rain blurred the Chicago skyline into streaks of silver and black. Nathaniel stood near, the piano with one hand in his coat pocket, calm enough to make everyone around him nervous. Victor entered the lounge 2 minutes later with Harold Bishop beside him. You wanted to see me, sir? Victor asked evenly. Nathaniel nodded once toward the conference table near the windows. Sit down. Victor obeyed without hesitation. That confidence bothered Nathaniel more now than guilt would have. Amara sat quietly near the far wall beside Denise, her legs tucked beneath her in the oversized leather chair. Nobody had offered her food. She still held the same untouched paper cup of hot chocolate from downstairs. Nathaniel placed the burner phone gently on the table between himself and Victor. Then he slid the silver lighter beside it. "Something's been bothering me," he said softly. Victor folded his hands. "What's that?" Nathaniel's eyes stayed on the lighter. "You told me you quit smoking 3 years ago." "I did." "Then why buy 2 coffees in the service cafe tonight?" Victor's expression barely changed. "Security rotations. One was for a driver." Nathaniel nodded slowly like the answer made perfect sense. "Which driver?" A small pause. "Barely noticeable. Kevin Ross." Nathaniel looked toward Harold. "Can you call Kevin?" Harold hesitated. Victor did not move, but Amara noticed one finger tap once against the armrest. "Tiny. Fast." Harold stepped aside and dialed. The room stayed quiet except for the low hum of the rain against the windows and the distant piano instrumental still looping softly through hidden speakers. No one touched the water glasses on the table. Kevin answered on speaker after the 3rd ring, sleepy and confused. "Mr. Bishop?" Harold smiled politely. "Sorry to wake you. Quick question. Did Victor buy you coffee downstairs tonight?" Silence crackled through the speaker. "No, sir," Kevin answered. "I wasn't even inside. Mr. Hale told us to wait outside after 11. Nathaniel said nothing. Neither did Victor. Harold quickly ended the call. The room felt colder afterward. Nathaniel walked slowly toward the windows overlooking the river. "Interesting," he murmured. Victor finally leaned back slightly. "Maybe the cashier printed the wrong quantity." Nathaniel nodded again. Calm. Controlled. "Maybe." He turned then, not toward Victor, but toward Amara. "What did you notice about the man with Victor downstairs?" Victor's eyes shifted instantly toward the little girl. Amara saw it. Nathaniel saw it too. "He kept his gloves on," Amara answered quietly. Harold frowned. "That means nothing." Amara looked down at the hot chocolate cup in her hands. It was warm in the loading dock. Nobody answered her immediately. She continued softly, "People only keep gloves on inside when they don't want fingerprints somewhere." Victor let out a quiet breath through his nose. "Or when it's raining in Chicago in February." Nathaniel's gaze moved slowly toward Victor's hands resting calmly on the table. Then toward the burner phone again. "You know what I find strange?" Nathaniel asked. "The voicemail." Victor stayed still. Nathaniel picked up the phone and pressed replay. The distorted voice filled the room once more. "Bring the phone back downstairs and nobody else gets hurt professionally." Nathaniel let the silence stretch after it ended. "You said this was extortion," he said lightly. "But whoever left that message already knew the phone was downstairs." Harold looked confused now. Victor answered carefully. "Because the girl found it downstairs." Nathaniel nodded faintly. "Right?" Then he asked the question softly enough that it almost sounded unimportant. "So why did the voicemail arrive 20 minutes before Amara ever showed anyone the phone?" The room went completely still. Even Harold stopped breathing for a second. Victor's eyes flicked toward the burner phone before he could stop himself. Tiny movement. Tiny mistake. But this time Nathaniel did not miss it. Neither did Amara. Across the table, the little girl tightened both hands around her paper cup and looked at Victor without fear for the first time that night. And Victor finally understood something far more dangerous than the phone, the lighter, or the voicemail. The billionaire was no longer looking at the child like a nuisance. He was listening to her. Victor recovered faster than most men would have. That was what made him dangerous. He leaned back, slowly in the leather chair, and folded his hands again, as though the room had merely become inconvenient instead of threatening. "You're building a narrative out of coincidences," he said calmly. "A child overhears fragments. A corrupted phone surfaces. Timestamps don't line up because hotel systems fail during storms. Nathaniel, you know how these nights work." Nathaniel did not answer. He remained standing beside the rain-streaked windows with one hand resting lightly against the back of the chair. Quiet. Watching. Amara noticed something then. Victor had stopped looking at her completely. He only watched Nathaniel now. like she mattered only if the billionaire believed her. Harold Bishop adjusted his tie uneasily. "We should pause this conversation until morning," he said carefully. "Everyone's exhausted." "No," Amara said softly. Her voice barely carried across the room, but it stopped Harold immediately. She slid carefully out of the oversized leather chair and walked toward the conference table with the paper cup still in her hands. Nathaniel looked down at her. "What is it?" Amara hesitated. Then she peeled back the cardboard sleeve around the hot chocolate cup. Something small fell onto the polished table with a soft plastic click. A micro SD card. Victor's face lost color for the first time all night. Not dramatically, just enough. Nathaniel saw it instantly. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. Amara swallowed. "Inside the cup holder downstairs." Harold frowned in confusion. "Why didn't you mention this before?" Amara looked at him directly. "Because all the adults kept trying to take things away." Silence settled over the room. Nathaniel slowly picked up the tiny card between two fingers. "What's on it?" Amara shook her head. "I didn't know how to open it." Victor stood abruptly. "Nathaniel, don't." The sharpness in his voice made everybody look at him. Too fast. Too emotional. Another mistake. Nathaniel turned calmly toward the conference room monitor mounted on the wall. "Harold," he said softly, "connect this." Nobody moved immediately. Rain ticked softly against the glass while the screen loaded inch by inch. A blue progress bar crawled across blackness. Victor remained standing now, one hand resting near the back of his chair. Not threatening, just ready. The file finally opened. Grainy security footage appeared from a garage corridor timestamped 11:29 p.m. The angle came from somewhere high inside the donor-level elevator lobby. Nathaniel froze almost immediately. Victor stood near the elevators speaking with another man whose face turned partially toward the camera under fluorescent light. CFO Martin Keller, Nathaniel's closest executive advisor. The man currently leading tomorrow's merger negotiations. The video had no sound at first. Then the audio synced with a burst of static. Keller's voice emerged low but unmistakable. "After tonight, the board signs with me." Victor answered. "And Sterling?" Keller adjusted his gloves calmly. "A tragedy during civil unrest polls better than internal succession." Nathaniel's breathing stopped for a second. Not metaphorically, literally. Amara heard it. The room seemed to tilt into silence around him. Keller continued on screen, pulling an envelope from inside his coat. "The overseas transfer clears by morning." Victor took it. Then Keller added one final sentence that made Nathaniel go pale beneath the city lights. 11 years beside him, and he never even saw you." The footage ended. Nobody spoke. Harold Bishop looked physically ill now. Victor stared at the frozen monitor image without blinking once. Nathaniel remained completely motionless beside the window, the SD card still pinched between his fingers. Slowly, very slowly, his eyes drifted toward Denise standing near the conference room door in her faded cleanup uniform. Then toward Amara, a 9-year-old girl who had protected evidence more carefully than the executives running his company. Nathaniel finally understood something unbearable then. This had not begun tonight. Men like Keller survived because people like Denise cleaned around them without being seen. Because children like Amara noticed danger while powerful men congratulated each other upstairs beneath chandeliers. Nathaniel lowered his gaze to the silver lighter on the table. Loyalty above fear. For the first time in years, the words sounded hollow. He placed the lighter down carefully beside the burner phone. Then he looked at Harold without raising his voice at all. "Call my attorney."